Hey, it's Bonding with Board Games with Judd Vance and Bart Brunchine, the Chief. Woohoo! This is our movie review segment. We're going to be talking about Midway, the 2019 version of Midway, and we will do it from a wargamer's perspective because that's what we do.
That is.
You remember this moment for the rest of your life.
All right, so Midway, the 2019 movie. To me, this is all about America on its heels and them showing how we begin to claw back, the surprise attack, and then what America does to come back, and of course, culminating in the big carrier battle at Midway. Your thoughts, Judd?
Right off the beginning, it says it's the biggest battle in American naval history. And I think it's really about setting that stage, how the players got there, each step of the way, and they look at it from both sides, what ended up getting them at that spot.
So, Judd, in reference to the movie itself, I'm torn on the graphics because sometimes, of course, the CGI is gorgeous. I mean, the setting sun, the ships, the planes, but then the Dauntless would turn into what looked like some kind of first-person shooter airplane game.
Yeah.
And so some of the scenes where they're diving, and I think he even brushes the deck of one of the carriers with his plane, or he gets close. I'm like, when's he diving, pulling out of this dive? He's gonna, what is it, a kamikaze?
Scene where where you kind of see when the bomb hits, this airplane like flies towards the screen.
This is for Pearl.
I was like, dude, you don't need to do that. I mean, they generally dropped him at 2,000. If you're real daring, 1,500. So yeah,
Right.
He's sitting there basically landing it right on top, and this is for Pearl Harbor. A little unnecessary. It's not enough to kill the movie because I like what they did overall, but it was unnecessary. It didn't need to be done. But I like when it shows that whole carrier exploding, the chain reaction. That was a little bit Hollywoody, but I really liked how when they dive into the stream of bullets, the way they really capture that. And if you compare it to the 77 movie, which is what they used to do, I think 76 movie, where they had the old footage taken from the airplanes from World War II. And you could always tell when they went to that because of the difference in the quality. And hey, it's what they had then. And they did a really good, you got real authentic footage, but they can clean it up now, kind of like what they did when they remastered this William Shatner Star Trek to update some of the graphics.
Yeah, it was a love-hate relationship, though, because sometimes I was like, wow, that would be the only way you could do that is CGI. And then other times I'm like, wow, they took that so far. Now it looks unreal to me.
Mm-hmm.
I loved, there's a scene where a little girl runs out as Pearl Harbor is being attacked, and they shoot it from behind her. And to me, it symbolized not only the attack, but kind of like America's innocence and that innocence being lost.
If you look at it at first blush, you'd almost say like it seemed like they were throwing too much in there. But I really like the amount of editing because I know, if they made my movie be 10 hours long, because I'm digging every minute of this. But like take for example Coral Sea, they barely cover it, and everything in this movie is geared towards what was the key components that got ready for Midway. And the one thing you really need to get out of Coral Sea is that the Yorktown got heavily damaged. And they show that. They don't cover the rest. If you look at the 77 movie, they go a lot into that. The Doolittle Raid, they don't go a ton into Doolittle. I mean, Pearl Harbor covered more of it than that did. But the point they're trying to get is when they struck Japan, suddenly Yamamoto's plane got back on the table that we need to go sink these carriers. So everything geared in this was to show it. So I thought they did a good job of driving the story and chopping out a lot of unnecessary stuff to tell that story. So I thought for as long a movie it was that they really did a good job on the editing.
So, Judd, just in terms of the acting, I'm going to just stick on one point. Ed Skrine's New Jersey accent for Dick Best was like an SNL skit for me. I was like, oh, every time he talked, I was like, what is he doing?
Yeah, it was what it was. More impressed with some of the other co-stars. Woody Harrelson especially, really liked him. Made me feel really old, though, to see him looking like Nimitz since he was the guy from Cheers.
Right.
In my mind.
His gray hair kind of stole the show for a moment when it came on. I was like, what?
Yeah, my dog, Woody, oh, my, it makes you feel bad. I also really like Patrick Wilson. He played Leighton and thought he did a really, really good job. And, of course, Dennis Quaid, I always enjoy him and everything. Rookie on up, I generally didn't always get a kick out of him. And I also enjoyed Luke Evans as McCutcheon. Thought he did a pretty solid job, too. Some of his material, Dick Best, why we're going to win this war. I was like, it's a little Hollywoodish what you give him, but I thought he did a pretty decent job, not trying to go over the top, just off of how he portrayed the character.
Loved the visuals from Japan when Yamamoto or the Navy's going in and kind of talking with the Army, and just the visual side and feeling like I was seeing the actual Japanese point of view of the war.
Yeah, that's actually one of the really good things that you see rarely come out of our atmosphere in society today, was that they were respectful. They weren't all just little evil bad guys. We're going to get the Americans. No, it was you saw it more from their perspective. I like the scene where they're toasting and one guy's not drinking and one guy has tea. Just little details like that was kind of cool. The scene with the duck hunting, real beautiful. The buildings were beautiful, but I mean, they did a really good job of showing their side of it.
I know why they put so much material in there. Pearl Harbor, Doolittle Raid, and then finally into the battle itself of Midway, but it felt rushed. I hoped, and I know why they didn't do it, but for like a Marvel Avengers style where you could see a whole movie on the Doolittle Raid or the whole movie focusing on the Battle of Midway. So I get why they didn't do it, but for me, it felt compacted.
Funny, if you see the 77 Midway, they show the Doolittle Raid, but they give no context. It just shows it. It's over. So I actually liked that they showed the Doolittle Raid and why it was important that, they can hit our homeland. We need to go get the carriers. So I was glad they did that.
I totally get it.
Yeah, probably my biggest dislike was the way they made the best character into Maverick from Top Gun. They didn't need that. They liked the little character story arcs and flaws and things. Completely unnecessary. There's so much incredible stuff and that you want to believe it. No, it really happened that way. That you do stuff like this and you just don't need it. There's enough in there already.
It was like he was some kind of reckless.
Yeah, you try to land with no flaps and all that stuff like he's doing, you get your wings yanked right away. I heard an admiral say that. So yeah, that was completely over the top, Hollywoodized, unnecessary.
Spot on. One of my likes was the showing of the code breakers and Rochefort in his robe and his slippers, and he slept there, and they used the band members to help break codes. I just thought that was awesome how they showed that.
Yeah, I mean, we learned about it in 85 when Leighton wrote the book. So it's nice that now that we had this information, we saw just how important, because if they didn't know when, where, and they were going to be there, they don't respond and set the ambush. It was so important. So it's nice to see so much focus on that aspect and the detail, the band members and the way they show that they get just little snippets of words and they piece it together. They did an excellent job showing that.
And even the battle going on between DC code breakers and the Hawaiian code breakers.
Yeah, I mean, the saltwater reclamator, whatever, was broken. That actually happened. So it was nice that they showed that detail. They just did it excellent. That's probably one of the strongest things they did was break the details down of how they broke the code. One of the parts I really liked in this was they showed the lack of coordination between the carrier groups. The torpedo bombers came in waves, and there was no fighter cover. They didn't coordinate it with the bombers. And the way they showed that the bombing group got lost and then stayed out there and then followed the Japanese ship back to its main force. The way they set that whole thing up with a Japanese ship trying to hit the submarine, that was great that they showed this much detail to show exactly why the lack of coordination was there and that historical detail. They could have, if they were Hollywoodizing the thing, they could have just showed one attack, it's over. So that was really great that they covered that much and did a really solid job, I thought, with how they handled that. I also liked a lot of little tiny historical details they showed in there. George Gay's torpedo bomber getting shot down. He's able to swim up to the top and see the whole show. The dead torpedoes. I've never seen that explained in anything. The Army-Navy disagreement on the Japanese side, never seen that covered. It's not talked about very much. When Dick Best peeled off and went after the Akagi, that really happened. He and his two wingmen saw basically the Akagi was getting hit by everybody, and he saw it and peeled off. Great touch of detail. That wasn't a superhero Hollywoodized. That really happened. And also one of the really cool things, I might say his name wrong, Bruno Gaido. That was the Nick Jonas character. He really did. You look at it, you thought, this is just Hollywood. No, it really happened. He jumped in the back of that plane. He sprayed that thing. And when it knocked it off course, it chopped off the back of his plane and spun it around. Another thing I thought they covered really well was Nagumo's dilemma. You know, how to rearm his planes. He's got the combat air patrol running out of fuel. How do you coordinate all this? You know, the Americans are now out there. We got to sink them first. But Japanese doctrine was we launch one big coordinated attack. So the guys on the ship were sitting on a powder keg. Everybody saw the danger, but how do you get out of this? So they did a really good job with that. I thought they did a lot better job than they did in the 77 movie with Pat Morita's acting like he's the only one that had it figured out. One thing I thought they had a big miss on was they made it look like it was more of a samurai, you know, we're going to take this desperate attack to try to win. And that's not what happened. They followed the American bombers back to their carrier, and they found Yorktown. They hit it. They had an uncoordinated attack. They first hit it with the dive bombers, hit it so hard they thought they sunk it and reported it. Yorktown miraculously got fixed in a couple of hours. The torpedoes came in, thought they were hitting a fresh carrier, reported back, we sunk a second carrier. So they thought two of our carriers were down. They thought we only had two carriers to start with in this thing. So that's part of why they were pressing the attack, because they thought they were still in this thing. So they really missed a chance to show that. They didn't show Yorktown get hit at all. If they're going to show Marshall Gilbert, they should have showed that. So I thought that was a big miss to explain why Yamamoto actually thought he was still in the fight.
So, of course, we cover games and war games. So what games, Judd, relate back to this movie? How can you go play in history?
Probably the best game to cover the topic is Midway. It's a 1965 Avalon Hill game, but it has aged extremely well compared to a lot of its peers. It uses a screen in between you, think Battleship. They call it double blind. And so you don't know where the guy is. And you're sending the search planes out to find them. And you're arming, you know, you're sending your waves of torpedo and dive bombers. And so it really gives you that feeling of not knowing where the enemy's at.
Now I'll give you the updated current iOS iPad version. It's called Battles for Guadalcanal. Make sure I got that right. Carrier Battles for Guadalcanal. It is Midway's in there, Coral Sea's in there. I mean, it's like 6 different battles, and it does all the same thing, but via an iOS app.
Another one that's pretty solid is Fires of Midway. This covers 4 different carrier battles in 1942, Midway being one of them. Little more gamey per se than the other game. Really pretty game, and it's a lot of dice chucking in this thing, card management, things like that going on. But it kind of puts you in the dilemma sometimes of how you wish to allocate your resources, your fighters to escort, how you're going to compose your forces to go attack the enemy.
Helps if I hold it the right way up. I will tell you that Pacific Typhoon from GMT Games, this is a group card game where you're actually kind of taking tricks but it's different battles, and you're not really playing a particular side. You're handling your hand of cards, and then you're coming in on either the Japanese or the Allies side.
Last one I have, and it's not necessarily Midway, it's the whole broader scope, but specific stuff in it. Empire of the Sun. Definitely not for a beginner wargamer. This is the most complicated, most difficult game I ever had to learn, despite all the resources out there to help you learn it. The reason I mention this is because they have cards. It's a card-driven game. They have cards for the JN25 Japanese code, Rochefort code breakers, the Army-Navy disagreements built into it, the dead torpedoes. You can set the ambush at Midway. I mean, not necessarily. Yeah, things have to fall right, but they got that theme in there. If you broke the code and you hit them hard.
Now, I want to mention I haven't played Enemy Coast Ahead, the Doolittle Raid, but it's a solitaire game, and obviously from the title, it focuses on the Doolittle Raid. So
I've never played it either.
All right, and part of our point here is that if you enjoy Midway or war movies in general, there is a whole world of games that allow you to go play in that history. So Judd and I both love reading about it. We love watching the movies about it or the TV shows. And of course, we love stepping in and actually playing the game. Anything else you want to say, Judd, before we close off this movie review?
Now, I know that there's the rivet counters, the guys who are after every detail. Some will gripe about stuff in the movie, but when you figure, I'm really happy. Roland Emmerich saw a documentary on this and said, I want to put this on the screen. So, yay. You know, we need more people learning about this. So few know history.
Yes.
And I'm really glad he did this. And I wish we had more. Hey, even if they miss a couple of points or Hollywoodized stuff, at least get the history out there so people could see. I mean, people need to see the bravery that went behind the, you know, that in our history. So I'm really glad he did this. I was hoping it would be a monster hit, so we just get more and more, you know, kind of like when Saving Private Ryan came out, we had a flurry of movies. So, you know, I wish they'd had more of them, but I'm really glad he did this.
Overall, big, I don't know if we want to use, let's not use thumbs up. What would wargamers use? A big roll of a number 6 on a die? What would be instead of a thumbs up?
I don't know.
We'll have to think about that in the comments if you guys know of a way for us to do it in a wargamer fashion. Right now, I'll say I rolled 6 dice and they all came up 6s.
Yeah, I mean, here's this one. You know, I went to the theater and saw it 4 times. So when it came out, I wish I could have seen more. I mean, my family would laugh at me. I'm going to go see Midway again. I mean, I just really enjoyed the movie.
Well, there you go. That says it all. All right. Well, thanks, guys and gals, for tuning in. Hopefully, if you guys like this, we'll do more war movie reviews.